Hallo, das hier ist eine kleine, kompakte Sonderfolge von Shut Up and Take My Money mit einem Interview. Manchmal haben wir nicht genügend zusammengefahren, um eine vollständige Folge zu machen, aber es gibt doch etwas, was unsere Aufmerksamkeit erregt hat, das wir vorstellen wollen. Und heute haben wir 2 solche Projekte und einen Hinweis. Und zu den Projekten, über die wir reden wollen, gehört einmal Nicht Gesellschaftsfähig. Das ist ein Buchprojekt, unter anderem von dem Cartoonist und Comic-Künstler Schwarwel, das sehr viele verschiedene Leute, Künstler, Betroffene und Wissenschaftler zusammenführt, um darüber zu schreiben, wie es denn ist, mit psychischen Beeinträchtigungen im Alltag zu leben, wie das aussieht, wie es sich anfühlt und was man machen kann. Und das Schöne daran ist, die wunderbare Fuchskind, die auch schon sehr liebenswerte Comics zum Thema Autismus, aber auch zum Thema Wissenschaft gemacht hat, ist ebenfalls mit von der Partie, zusammen mit einem Riesenhaufen schlauer und sympathischer anderer Menschen. Das findet ihr auf keiner der einschlägigen Seiten, was Crowdfunding angeht, sondern unter der Seite von Schwarwel selber. Schwarwel supporten und dort findet ihr unter Crowdfunding das Nicht Gesellschaftsfähig, Hashtag Nicht Gesellschaftsfähig Büchlein und könnt es unterstützen. Es ist schon zur Hälfte gefundet und läuft noch eine ganze Weile. Und das Projekt, das die meiste Zeit heute einnehmen wird, weil wir dazu ein Interview geführt haben, ist ein kurioses kleines englisches Rollenspiel mit dem Titel Shadow of Mogg. Und der Beschreibung, es sei ein Post-Brexit-Rollenspiel. Im Endeffekt ist es ein postapokalyptisches Rollenspiel, wo normale Londoner Bürger im London Underground versuchen zu überleben und gemeinsam Entscheidungen zu treffen mit einem sehr kuriosen satirischen Tonfall. Und wie genau das entstanden ist, was es bedeutet und wie sich das anfühlt, das zu spielen, haben wir den Entwickler Penny im Interview fragen können. Das jetzt folgt.
I'm with Penny right now, who has a Kickstarter running at the moment for a game called The Shadow of Mogg. And it's already funded, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And to be honest, as a non-Brit, I had to think a little bit and quite hard about why Shadow of Mogg. And my best guess is that it's named after Rhys Mogg, right?
Yes, for libel reasons, it's purely for the reasons of satire and parody. But yes, of course, he's a politician in the UK, a Tory politician who's pretty infamous due to many of his policy and party policy choices. But the other interesting thing about Mogg is it's also sort of a generic name for a goblin in a lot of different sources of fantasy media, like Mogg fanatics in Magic the Gathering are like crazy goblin that very violent and explodes on you, I think. So I like the idea of merging those two together.
Okay. Comes in handy when someone like him has a name that you can spoof easily.
Indeed, yes, it's quite convenient. I can always just say, "Hey, it's just another name for a goblin."
It's a name for a goblin, yeah. It says it's a post-Brexit role-playing zine, and you play after some event in the London Underground, post-apocalyptic kind of. I guess we can all guess what kind of, event happened. But I'm wondering about what you're actually going to do in the game. I mean, the overtones are satire, very much so. But what are you actually going to do? How's that going to work as a game?
Yeah, so it is indeed a post-Brexit game, but I also like to think of it as a sort of post-truth game, with the event, within the sort of lore of the world. Nobody really knows what it is. Like, everyone has a different theory, but nobody trusts what anyone else really thinks. So everyone sort of come up with their own idea. But what is known is that everyone lives underground now, and the core of the gameplay is really it's like traditional. I got a lot of inspirations from traditional OSR dungeon crawling, which I play and run a lot of. So the core of the game is really you and a group of survivors traveling through the tunnels, exploring different stations. Some of them might be abandoned, some of them might have been taken over by different factions within the game, which sort of ape the current sort of political factions we can see in contemporary society right now, whether it's literally the Whigs or the Tories, or the likes of climate protesters or things like that. That's the meat of the game is really, and it's resource management as you go around. So it's deciding it's fun things gamers like encumbrance and tracking rations.
Okay, I think what's a little bit more usual with the tracking rations is it says that it has a resolution mechanic for like democratic decisions in a group.
Yeah.
So how's that going to work? Are we going to have like, and you are the House of Commons and you're the House of Lords fight?
Sort of. That's it's a thing I noticed with a lot of role-playing games is they don't tend to give a lot of guidance to the players on how to actually make decisions as a group, whereas most role-playing games are group games where decision making as a group is really important, but they tend to just leave it up for the players to be like, work it out. So I wanted to create some mechanics for that, but also obviously tied into the sort of political nature of it. Very simply put, effectively there's every major decision in the game needs to be voted on by the group. That goes in a sort of round robin style where one person proposes a proposal and everyone else votes on that proposal, whether for or against or whatever the parameters are. And then if it's voted for, the action happens, but then it's also resolved as a group, and players effectively bid dice based on their stats and skills, and the more committed they are, the more hurt they could be by the action because they're really committing to it. But the less committed they are, the less chance they'll individually get hurt, but the more chance the group as a whole will fail and they'll all suffer consequences. So there's a tension there within the mechanics of like, we voted for this, but I still don't really want to participate, but I'm still going to be affected by it, which I think is something a lot of British people are feeling right now. So that's the idea of it, and it's in practice it's it gets interesting.
That sounds like it covers a lot of different situations that you bet your dice on hoping that the situation gets resolved. So is there kind of the basic way you play this game? Because it sounds like that's going to be, we're going to explore, we're going to do this, we're going to interact with the groups that are also going to be like, we're going to fight. And okay. The idea was to kind of remove, like, it's a role-playing game, so you can do things freeform, obviously. But the idea is that the core resolution mechanic, basically anything significant that happens in the game is decided upon and resolved as a group, and there's no real like individual way of necessarily resolving actions beyond like sort of freeform. Okay.
That's the idea with it at the moment, because it's about enforcing that sort of group dynamic in quite a rigid way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I get it. That's going to leave enough space in the zine for 37 classes.
Yeah.
It sounds like it kind of got out of hand. 37 classes is a little bit lot. What happened there?
No, it's very well thought out. It's you use D66 to work out the classes, which goes up to 36, and then there's a special class which you can only get if you roll 66 twice, basically a character creation. And the idea from that actually, so I was the early versions of the game were like much more just like D&D, but the London Underground. So there was literally like a soldier instead of a fighter, and a literal like psychic who could really cast like psychic powers instead of like a wizard. And I felt that was a bit too much of like a power fantasy for what I wanted. I wanted a game that was about like sort of being a regular person of the British public, but then I was like, well, I'd need like 1 million classes, and then I was like, oh, I could just have like 36 different classes on a nice D66 table, which was actually inspired by there's a game called Troika by Daniel Sell, which does the same thing, and it just has 36 classes that you roll randomly for a character creation. And I thought that was such an excellent way of doing it and sort of building up a world. I thought, oh, I could do a similar thing. And so, yeah, the 36 classes were born, and they're randomly decided, as I say. So you don't get to pick your class; you just roll at the start of the game, and they range from like teachers to bakers to like. I mean, there is still like an ex-army person, and there's like a police person, and there's like various others like tinkers and tailors, and like there's a few silly things in there as well.
And yes, and time travelers. And chief executive of the Royal Bank of Scotland. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, there's a broad gamut. There's a few silly things there. There's a few like Python-esque and silly nods to aspects of like British pop culture as well, I guess.
Okay, I totally get what a baker would bring, or an ex-police officer would bring to the game, or a teacher and a time traveler, obviously. But what does an executive of a bank bring to post-apocalyptic survival? I mean,
well, very little, which is literally the point. Like it's about adapting to your new life. So I think the bank executive gets like a briefcase of money, but nobody uses money anymore. Everyone just trades in like scrap that they can use to like, because there's like a minor system in the game to like upgrade like weapons and items and trade as well. And so they get a briefcase full of money that doesn't really do much.
Anything.
And they get a nice suit, and they're quite good at talking to people, like in terms of like charisma or banter, as it's called in the game. But then they're not actually very like some of the classes, like it's not a particularly balanced game in the sense that every class is equally distributed. Like the whole point is like just like a real class system. God, I'm so subtle with my
extremely, yeah.
It's so subtle.
I can hardly spot the satire.
No, it's so clever. But that's the idea of just like a real class system. It's not fair. So but hopefully it will be fun.
Yeah, in test playing, how did it work out? Did people commit to this idea, or was it mostly just cracking jokes? How long does it does the idea and the gameplay carry a session or even a campaign?
Yeah, so it works. Like I was really surprised by how well the voting mechanics worked in practice. Players, like I was concerned, players wouldn't want to do it because it's something that people don't tend to do in a role playing game. It tends to be a bit more freeform, and it's quite a rigid way to structure like how players go about resolving their actions in the game. But it worked really well, and I found players even like building up their own like mini constitutions, because they were like, well, we can just vote for this decision to be permanent, can't we? I was like, yeah, I guess you can.
Okay.
They were like writing it down. So that was really interesting in terms of the voting also led to players being able to like how do I put it, like buffer the immoral decisions they were making within the group. So things escalated a lot more quickly than I expected as well. Like the game's intended to be run in a fairly free-form fashion. It uses a lot of like random tables and like, as I say, I play a lot of like old school D&D-esque games where it's more about like emergent style gameplay. So it's intended to play like that. So I hadn't intended the group to, for example, vote not to feed their dog. So their dog ended up starving to death. But that's what
monsters. Usually groups they go about slaughtering intelligent beings left and right, but the dogs always survive. So I'm very surprised.
Yeah, they were like, well, what can a couple of nights without food do? But it's like, well, it's like the systems are pretty harsh within the game for things like exposure, because it's like the idea is that you've been starving underground for a long time, so even one meal can be a risk not to take. Okay, but those are interesting elements.
That's gonna go on the back. You are going to kill your dog.
that should bullet point. Yeah, beware. Yeah.
Okay, you've been working on this for quite some time. So honestly, did you wait until Brexit actually happened to start the Kickstarter?
It was more on a. I did release an edition called, which is a different iteration of the rules actually, called the Out Means Out edition on the date, but we said we'd be out and we weren't. And this one just occurred because I had some time off and had time to do it, but it's it could have actually been slightly better timed, but Brexit's literally going to go on forever, so.
No, you're going to be through at the end of the year. Everything will be fine.
Everything will be fine. I mean, but it's been in the works for about a year or so, but through quite a lot of different iterations. As I say, initially it was literally like 4 classes D&D, but underground, and I was more experimenting with like the tunnel crawling mechanics and like how people travel around, and then I built up like the other systems on top of that as I went.
Okay, and last question. How many people have already told you that they don't want any politics in their games and that you're ruining their escapist fun?
Not as many as you'd think. I've certainly I have had a couple of comments like, "Oh God, no more, please, no more." More a sort of existential despair, which than necessarily frustration against me as a designer. It's been far more successful than I was expecting. I mean, it's going to be a fairly limited like A5 zine booklet, so I haven't needed a huge amount of like startup cash for it, but I've been like release applies for like 200% funding goal at the moment, which is really good, and we've still got like 9 days to go. So Shadow of Mogg, if you're interested in playing games in the underground, please back.
For the German viewers, that's Mogg with 2 G.
Yeah,
you're going to be able to find it. So, is it a cathartic feeling to have done this and to have worked on this?
Definitely. I mean, I wrote a lot of it on the tube, to be honest, which was like commuting to work, and with the buzz of like Brexit throughout its whole like news cycle. It's been a cathartic process, and playing it's been play testing it has been. I don't know if it's cathartic or but like just interesting in terms of like the different group dynamics that come out, and how it does sort of reflect what I've been seeing around me happen, like sort of people falling into chaos through disinformation and factionalism and populism and things like that. So there's definitely a cathartic element to it.
Okay, so thank you for the interview. Best of luck with finishing the game and producing it, and generally best of luck with the rest of the year. I mean, you're welcome over here, but we don't know yet how that's going to work out.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Maybe for when I'd like to come to Essen this year. So
oh yeah. that should still be safe. We're still, everything is just as it was before until we work it out.
Good. Yes. Well, thank you for thank you for taking your time and having me on. It's been good chatting.
Das war der Hauptteil von dieser kleinen Sonderfolge Shut Up and Take My Money. Mir bleibt jetzt noch einen kurzen Hinweis zu geben und Tschüss zu sagen. Und der Hinweis ist sozusagen Community Service. Der Uhrwerk Verlag hat inzwischen auch ein Patreon, wo man es unterstützen kann und dann vorab Zugriff auf verschiedene Dinge bekommt, beziehungsweise besondere Zusatzsachen für verschiedene Rollenspiele, die sie herstellen, vertreten, verlegen. Als jemand, der von Patreon zu einem guten Teil lebt, sehe ich Patreon in erster Linie als eine Seite für Künstler, für Freischaffende und nicht als eine für Verlage. Aber der Uhrwerk Verlag ist, nachdem ja Ende letzten Jahres tatsächlich erstmal die Lichter kurz ausgemacht wurden, bevor sie wieder angemacht werden konnten, im Grunde nur noch Patrick Götz, also ein Mann-Verlag. Und da finde ich, ist die Grenze doch schon deutlich weicher zu ziehen, als wenn jetzt tatsächlich ein größerer Verlag anfängt, auch über Crowdfunding in diesem Sinne sich zu finanzieren. Das finde ich grenzwertig. Patrick ist für mich irgendwie noch auf der richtigen Seite der Grenze. So viel dazu. Vielen Dank für die Aufmerksamkeit. Ich hoffe, dass gerade das nicht gesellschaftsfähig Thema, das mich auch sehr anspricht, vielleicht ein paar Freunde hier noch findet. Und in der Londoner U-Bahn rumkrauchen kann man auch immer. Macht's gut. Tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.
And I know that when you're here, I've got to show that I'm the nicest, the neatest, the most lovely girl. 'Cause ooh, I'm in love, and baby, you know. Because I'm in love with you, and baby, you know. You are so devilly, 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 and I'm so lovely, lovely, lovely. You make fun of me, fun of my love. You are so devilly, 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 and I'm so lovely, lovely, lovely in your head. Oh. I'm such a lonely girl, and you know that I'll be with you forever